Carl Jung taught us that true awakening doesn't happen in a moment of peace, but in the storm of suffering. It's when life pushes us to the limit, when we find ourselves trapped in toxic relationships, destructive patterns, and an endless array of internal struggles, that our psyche forces us to do something. Wake up. Maybe you've reached a point in your life where you screamed, "No more," where you felt you couldn't keep carrying the weight of a relationship that wears you down, a job that extinguishes your spirit, or a version of yourself you no longer recognize. Jung would say that this moment of crisis is actually the greatest opportunity for your transformation. But what does it really mean to wake up in Jungian psychology? Awakening isn't simply realizing something. It's integrating the parts of ourselves we've ignored. It's facing the shadows that have secretly governed our existence. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you let someone trample your dignity? How many times have you accepted less than you deserve simply because you believed that was the best you could get? Jung would tell us this isn't a coincidence. It's the result of unconscious wounds, unresolved traumas, and a deep disconnection from our authentic self. From the moment we're born, society shapes us. It teaches us what's acceptable and what isn't, tells us how we should behave, which emotions we can show, and which ones we must repress. But in that process, we lose something invaluable: our authenticity. Jung called this loss the process of individuation, a phenomenon where little by little we drift away from our true selves to fit the expectations of the outside world. But there comes a moment in life when that disconnection is no longer sustainable. The anxiety, the sadness, the frustration, and the exhaustion are signs that your unconscious is screaming for attention. It's asking you to look within, to face what you've avoided for so long. And here's the truth. When you decide to say no more, when you choose to put yourself first, you're not being selfish, you're responding to the call of your unconscious. You're starting the process of coming home, of reclaiming the parts of yourself you'd given away to others, the shadow, the hidden enemy that controlled your life. Jung discovered that within each person lives what he called the shadow. It's that part of our psyche that holds everything we've repressed: fears, unacceptable desires, traumas, unexpressed emotions. And the more we ignore it, the more control it has over us. That's why we often end up trapped in destructive relationships. We find ourselves again and again with people who hurt us, who manipulate us, who make us feel small, not because fate is cruel, but because our shadow is guiding us toward them. Think about it. If you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where you had to strive to be seen, what kind of relationships will you attract in your adult life? Surely you'll seek out people who reinforce that same dynamic, not because you consciously want it, but because your unconscious pushes you to recreate those patterns over and over until you finally wake up. When you decide to shout no more, you're not just rejecting a person or a situation, you're facing your shadow. You're looking in the mirror and saying, "I won't keep repeating this story." And in that instant, something changes within you. The shadow can no longer control you in the same way. You no longer need external validation to feel complete. You stop handing your power to others, you start reclaiming it. And this is where self-love is born. Not from a superficial act, not from empty motivational phrases, but from the deep recognition of who you really are. From the understanding that you deserve better, not because someone else tells you so, but because you feel it in every fiber of your being. The process of transformation, from pain to freedom. Jung said that the only way to reach true wholeness was by traversing the darkness. We can't escape our wounds. We must face them, understand them, and finally integrate them. This process isn't easy. There will be days when you doubt your decision, when your mind tries to drag you back to the comfort of the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. But every time you choose to keep going, every time you remind yourself you deserve more, the transformation becomes deeper. Here's where self-love turns into an unstoppable force. It's not just a fleeting feeling, it's a radical shift in how you perceive the world and yourself. It's the certainty that no matter what happens, you'll always have your own back. And when you reach this point, something magical happens. The people who used to manipulate you no longer have power over you. The relationships that drained you disappear. The fear of loneliness dissolves because you discover that being with yourself is a gift, not a punishment. The external world changes because your internal world has changed. And here's the key Jung wanted us to understand. The reality we experience is a direct reflection of our inner state. When your self-love awakens, you don't need to beg for love because you know love is already within you. You don't need to desperately seek others' approval because you approve of yourself. And in that moment, you become an unstoppable force. What few understand is that life never takes anything away without giving you something better in return. But the problem is we're so attached to the pain, to the story we tell ourselves about who we are and what we deserve, that we don't leave space for the new. We keep holding on to relationships that harm us. We keep enduring dynamics that drain us. We keep walking paths that lead to the same emptiness. And we do it because we're afraid to let go. We're terrified of the idea of being alone, of getting lost in the uncertainty, of not knowing what comes next. Jung said that the unconscious keeps us trapped in these patterns because we haven't yet learned the lesson they're teaching us. In other words, life will keep giving you the same tests until you wake up. That's why you repeat relationships where you're not valued. That's why you get involved with people who manipulate you, who minimize you, who make you feel insufficient, not because fate is cruel, but because your unconscious is giving you the chance to see yourself clearly. Until one day something inside you changes. You no longer fear losing someone because you understand that no one can take away what's truly yours. You no longer fear loneliness because you discover that the worst loneliness is being surrounded by people who don't see you, who don't respect you, who don't love you the way you deserve to be loved. That's the moment you shout, no more. No more half-hearted relationships, no more sacrifices that destroy you, no more seeking outside what you can only find within. And that's when everything starts to change. Because the day you decide to choose yourself, the universe responds. You stop being the submissive, people-pleasing, dependent version of yourself. You stand up with a different energy. You walk with a confidence you didn't have before, and others notice it. The same people who once belittled you now feel your power. And some will try to make you doubt. They'll try to manipulate you. They'll try to pull you back into the same cycle. But this time, you're different. You no longer settle for crumbs. You no longer let someone into your life just because. Now you have a filter, a standard, a self-love that's not willing to negotiate. And this is the most incredible thing. When you align with your true self, the right people come to you. Not because you're desperately seeking them, but because your energy has changed. You no longer radiate lack or desperation. Now you project confidence, balance, and authenticity. Here's where most people fail. Because when they start this awakening process, they expect immediate results. But self-love isn't a goal. It's a journey. It's a lifelong commitment. And if you ever feel like you're slipping back, like the old you was trying to reappear, don't punish yourself. It's part of the process. The key is to remind yourself every day who you are, to observe your thoughts, to question the beliefs that limit you, to surround yourself with people who lift your energy instead of draining it. It's okay to feel fear when you're leaving behind a version of yourself that's existed for years. But remember this, every time you let go of something that's not aligned with you, you're creating space for what truly belongs to you. Take a moment and think about this. How many times have you said you want something better but keep clinging to the old? How many times have you asked for love but stayed in relationships where you don't receive it? How many times have you dreamed of freedom but remained chained to what no longer fulfills you? The answer is within you. No one's going to rescue you. No one's going to give you the love you don't give yourself. No one's going to come and tell you it's time to wake up. That moment has to come from you. And when you finally decide to do it, when you finally choose to let go of what no longer vibrates with you, when you realize that self-love isn't an option but a requirement, in that instant, your life changes forever. Something incredible happens when you start to prioritize yourself. The world tests you. Just when you decide to choose yourself, a temptation appears disguised as second chances. It might be that person who didn't value you before and now comes back with empty promises. It might be a situation that repeats itself, an invitation to fall back into the same pattern you were just escaping. And this is where many fail, because they confuse the test with a sign from fate. They think that person coming back means they'll change this time. that the repeating situation is a new chance to get it right. But it's not. It's your unconscious checking if you've really learned the lesson, if you've truly changed. You won't fall again. You won't let yourself get caught by the same pretty words, by the same excuses dressed up as promises, because now you know what you're worth. Because now you understand that love isn't about insisting on something that's already shown you it's not for you. But here comes the hardest part: loneliness. When you decide to break away from what no longer fulfills you, there's a void, a space between the old you and the new you. And many people can't bear that void. They run back to what hurt them because at least it was familiar, because at least they weren't alone. But true growth happens in that space of uncertainty, in those moments when you feel the temptation to go back, but choose to keep going. In those moments when your mind tells you to settle, but your soul asks you to wait for something better. Jung spoke of this process as the transformation of the self. You can't become someone new without first letting go of the old. You can't expect to find the love you deserve if you keep allowing what doesn't. You can't elevate your life if you keep carrying what holds you down. And it hurts. Of course it hurts. Because you're letting go not just of a person, but of the version of you that tolerated less than you deserved. You're leaving behind the stories you told yourself about what you could and couldn't have. You're breaking away from everything you once thought was normal, but was really a prison. But if you can endure that void, if you can hold yourself in that uncertainty, something incredible happens. You realize that self-love isn't about someone else choosing you. It's about you choosing yourself over and over, no matter who's by your side. When you reach this point, when your self-love is solid, when you no longer fear losing someone because you know you'll never lose yourself, the world rearranges itself in your favor. You stop attracting what used to hurt you. Relationships stop being a constant struggle. Love no longer feels like a battle but like a home. And it's not magic, it's energy. It's the vibration you emit when you value yourself, when you respect yourself, when you no longer tolerate what you once allowed. It's the frequency you move in when you decide you deserve better and won't settle for less. Look at your life right now. Observe the relationships, the situations, the emotions you carry inside. Do they resonate with you? Do they lift you up or drain you? Do they make you feel loved or make you doubt your own worth? If there's something dimming your light, it's time to let it go. If there's something that doesn't vibrate with you, it's time to release it. And yes, it might hurt. It might scare you. But what's on the other side of that fear is a freedom you can't imagine. Self-love isn't just a pretty phrase. It's a daily decision. It's a standard you set for yourself. It's the courage to say no more when something doesn't do you good. It's the bravery to let go even when it hurts. It's the certainty that no matter what happens, you'll always have the most important person in your life with you, yourself. And in that moment, when you truly choose yourself, when you decide never to betray yourself again, you become unstoppable. Because self-love isn't a destination, it's a power. And once you awaken it, nothing and no one can take it away from you. When you choose yourself, when you decide your worth doesn't depend on anyone else, life changes radically. Suddenly, the things that used to make you suffer no longer have the same effect on you. The words of those who once made you feel small now sound empty. You realize you never depended on external validation, that the love you searched for so hard outside was always within you, waiting to be recognized. But this awakening isn't just a change of mindset. It's a deep process that transforms every aspect of your life. Your relationships change because you no longer accept what you once tolerated. Your energy changes because you no longer waste time convincing others to value you. Your priorities change because now you understand that the most important thing is your peace, your well-being, your authenticity. It doesn't mean the path will be easy. In fact, at first, it might feel like an internal war. Your mind will try to sabotage you, making you believe you're making a mistake, that you're losing something valuable. But what you're really losing is the fear, the dependency, the need to be accepted at any cost. And what you're gaining is something priceless, the freedom to be who you really are. The people who once had power over you will try to make you doubt. Excuses will appear, manipulations, attempts to convince you to return to what you already knew. But now instead of feeling trapped, you feel clarity. You realize those dynamics were never love, just a reflection of your unhealed wounds. And by recognizing them, they no longer control you. This is where many stumble, because the fear of the unknown is strong. What if by letting go of everything that doesn't serve me, I end up empty-handed? But that's the great deception of the unconscious. You can't lose what's truly yours. What's meant for you won't leave, and what isn't was only holding you back. When you decide to trust, when you let go without fear, life surprises you. You enter a state of flow where things start to align. The right people appear, opportunities arise, paths that once seemed impossible suddenly open. Not because luck has changed, but because your energy has changed. Self-love isn't an abstract concept. It reflects in every choice you make, in every boundary you set, in every time you decide not to betray yourself. It's waking up every morning with the certainty that you deserve the best and won't settle for less. It's looking back and seeing how much you've grown, how much you've learned, how much you've evolved. And then one day you realize you're no longer the same person who once allowed what you'd never accept today, that now your peace is worth more than any forced connection, that love isn't about struggle or sacrifice, but about harmony and respect. You look around and see that the world is still the same, but you've changed. And by changing, everything around you transforms with you. Because reality is nothing more than a reflection of your inner state. So the question is, are you ready to wake up? Are you ready to let go of what's been holding you back? Are you ready to choose yourself without fear, without guilt, without doubts? Because the moment to do it isn't tomorrow. It isn't when circumstances are perfect. It isn't when someone else validates you. The moment is now. It's always been now. When you realize that self-love isn't just a concept, but a real transformation within you, everything starts to make sense. You no longer fight to be seen. You no longer force connections that don't flow. You no longer wear yourself out in situations that steal your peace. Because now you understand something that once seemed impossible to accept. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to beg for love, for respect, for attention. What's authentic, what's truly aligned with you, comes without effort, without strain, without sacrifices that erase you. But to reach this point, you had to go through everything you've lived. You had to hit rock bottom, feel the pain, face the shadows of your own mind. Because without those moments of darkness, you'd never have awakened. You'd never have found the courage to say no more, to set boundaries, to choose yourself above all else. And now that you're here, now that you've started this transformation process, you must remember something very important. This is just the beginning. Self-love isn't a goal you reach and then everything's solved. It's a daily commitment, a constant choice to prioritize yourself, to care for yourself, to ensure that everything you accept in your life is in harmony with your worth. There will always be tests, moments when you'll doubt, when your mind will try to drag you back to the old. But every time you face those moments, remember everything you've learned. Remember that you're not here to settle, that you didn't come into this world to suffer in meaningless relationships, to waste your energy in places where you're not appreciated. You came to live with wholeness, with purpose, with real love. And if this message resonated with you, if something inside you clicked, then don't keep this transformation just for yourself. There are so many people out there still trapped in the same chains you're breaking free from. People who need to hear this, who need to wake up, who need that spark to start their own process. Share this video with someone you think needs it. Leave me in the comments what impacted you the most, what decision you're ready to make, what you're going to let go of starting today. I want to read you. I want this to be a community where we can all grow together. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss more content like this. Because every time you interact with a video like this, every time you leave a comment, share, or join the conversation, you're helping more people hear this message and transform their lives.